The genre we now appreciate today as low fidelity or lo-fi hip-hop was pioneered early on by a series of creators taking inspiration from early boom-bap practices. As the name implies, one of the defining creative choices of the genre is the ability to audibly hear production errors. Compressed audio, vinyl dust, sharp cuts, the hiss of analog machines, and noticeable errors within the music became some of the defining sounds of this subgenre. However, there is a significant gap in definition when the phrase lo-fi hip-hop is used, depending on what generation and equipment it originates from, and what sampling conventions it follows. For simplicity's sake, I'll be referring to them in two different schools of production, classic lo-fi and new lo-fi. Classic lo-fi is a genre of hip-hop that is again defined by the fidelity errors as a creative choice. I emphasize this because at the time these fidelity limitations were a result of the hardware, likening this genre of hip-hop closest to classic boom bap in nature. In fact, these two subgenres are nearly indistinguishable in technique at times. Classic lo-fi and boom bap can both rely on jazz instrumentation at times, in addition to loops and breakbeats being taken directly off a record and then being placed into a digital sampler for that signature sound. Both genres have a noticeable shared area of fidelity due to sampling directly off a record and working with the same limited power of classic drum machines. In practice, these two are fundamentally the same. The only defining feature that separates the two is the mood invoked via sample choice. Although there are exceptions to the following criteria, classic boom bap intentionally evokes a sound that is characterized as dark, moody, and raw. The main goal is to almost smack the listener with hard-hitting audio that emphasizes rhythm and low end more than anything else. Classic lo-fi, on the other hand, carries an almost dreamy, full, and warm aesthetic closer to soothing romantic jazz. One of the producers we now credit today with helping to kickstart the lo-fi genre is Nujabes, a Japanese DJ and hip-hop producer. The artist's Lovesick Hexology proved to be one of the defining works for lo-fi going forward, in his heavily sample-based production. This album has a focus on romantic and lush theming, and the sample choice reflects that very directly in an attempt to emphasize the romantic content of the lyrics.
Funny how the music put time to perspective. How the sound trapped in your life to perfect it. Whenever you're up, feeling low, keep walking and we can't get far. Wherever you are.
Some of these selections, with their orchestral fullness and poignant composition, wouldn't feel out of place in the realm of an emotional film score. If a producer wanted to make a Nujabes-inspired track, they might look toward lush sound selection, stylistically low fidelity, and classic boom bap influences. By comparison, new lo-fi takes those elements and runs with them in a very different way. New lo-fi is also about jazz instrumentation at times, especially jazz harmony, and is still almost about a romantic, emotional, or soothing mood. Many of the most popular lo-fi beats and playlists are often advertised with the explicit purpose of lo-fi beats to study and relax to, designed as soothing background music above all else. In these productions, hip-hop elements also remain, but drums typically contain less punch compared to the classic lo-fi, and music has become significantly more mellow and down-tempo. New lo-fi is also typically not accompanied by vocals or rapping, as classic lo-fi often was. Still, the main change between the two schools of lo-fi is the production process. New lo-fi bears little resemblance to classic lo-fi in terms of production process, as it's created mainly using modern-day DAWs starting around the early to mid-2010s, rather than the drum machines of the 90s and the early 2000s. The drums within lo-fi are typically taken as chops from a sample pack rather than a breakbeat, with noticeable post-processing to make them sound characteristically worn or imperfect after the fact. Loose Dilla-esque time fills are still welcome, as the lack of quantization adds to the main focal point of the subgenre, the slight mistakes within a mix. But new lo-fi, with all of its new distinctions, still exists as a particularly sample-based medium, just with a different creative process. Sampling in new lo-fi is often about interpolation. Existing samples are played with MIDI or recorded into the DAW without importing the raw audio itself, and instead using the composition as material. In this way, sampling in new lo-fi is closer to the act of creating covers than anything else. Whole albums are crafted using popular songs, artists, and various compositional material like games or other elements of pop culture. practice of interpolation or covering is not a new one by any means, but it is the one that the lo-fi subgenre most openly welcomes as a practice in remix. Taking the high-fidelity recording of the composition, the next task of most lo-fi producers would be to distort, simulate, and lower the fidelity of the audio to retroactively make it seem as though it was a sample taken from an older record. The audio is then placed through more post-processing in order to superimpose more errors onto it. This creative process intentionally evokes nostalgia for prior eras of sample-based production via the invocation of these imperfections that were part of the technical limitations at the time. The artificial use of nostalgia as a creative tool is a very powerful one. Manipulated fidelity and intentional limitations, even if artificially imposed, can create a feeling of familiarity within listeners that allows these errors to not only become normalized, but anticipated and welcome.